Thank you so much for joining the Celtra webinar. Welcome to the Celtra Creative Insights Report, 4th edition. I can't believe we're up to the 4th edition of this report already. If you've been following these reports and have read them before, thank you so much for joining. If this is new to you, don't worry, we're going to go over what this report is, how to read it, how to take insights away from it. Huge thanks to everybody joining us live today, and shout out to you if you're watching a recording of this later on. And again, we're running a poll for everyone who's joined us live, so feel free to answer that quick question in the poll window. The question is, what kinds of ad products do you want to see more of in the Celtra library? All right, so let's get into it. On today's agenda, we're going to run through some introductions, and then I'm briefly going to review the framework of the Creative Insights Report. And if you're unfamiliar with the Creative Insights Report, Celtra developed a way of classifying ad products in order to set the structure for us to calculate performance benchmarks. And that's something we get asked for a lot at Celtra, right? Performance benchmarks. These are an important part of how Celtra users are telling the success story of their creations back to their advertiser clients. So with these numbers, our users can provide advertisers with a richer context within the larger industry landscape. And we hope you can use these stats from the report and your own benchmarks that you calculate to package together your proprietary ad products that you're creating in Celtra. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the top trends we've seen so far this year and some predictions we have for the rest of 2023. All right, let's introduce today's presenters. My name is Nikki Gertner. I'm Director of Marketing here at Celtra, but more importantly, we have a special guest joining us today. Vincent Krsulich is the president of Martini Media, which specializes in reaching affluent audiences online with imaginative, high-impact digital advertising. So we're going to sit down with Vincent in just a sec and pick his brain about what makes for a successful ad product, especially for luxury advertisers, which is really their focus. But first, let's do a quick overview of the framework of the Creative Insights Report. So if this is the first time you've ever seen the Celtra Creative Insights Report, these concepts might be helpful in terms of understanding the data and applying it to your own narrative of what you build in Celtra. The data in this report was collected from Q3 to Q4 of 2022 across Celtra's global customer base. And the inventory we looked at included display, fast video, VPaid video, and this was all across desktop, mobile web, and in-app environments. Each analysis included at least 10 creatives with a minimum of 100K impressions observed. And you'll notice that not every analysis includes every iteration of what a potential ad product could be. These combinations of mechanism and content type, which we're going to explain in a minute, are excluded due to low performance or small sample. But if there's additional data that you're looking for, specifics, feel free to reach out to us after this webinar, and we'd be happy to dive into that. We're not going to look at the whole report on this webinar. We're just going to kind of look at some basic takeaways and top trends that we've seen. But feel free to take a look at the report on your own time and reach out with any questions as well. All right, so in order to draw insights, Celtra developed this universal system of classifying ad products, no matter what kind of media that you have access to, right? You might have in-app, you might have digital web, anything like that. But it all starts in Celtra with the visual experience of the ad, which we break into two parts. The first is the mechanism, and the second is the content. First, we'll take a look at the mechanism. This is the way the content is first introduced on load as soon as the impression fires. So in this report, we look at 4 different types of mechanisms: static, animated, reactive, and video. We believe these 4 mechanisms represent different visual presentation methods of advertiser-supplied assets, right? So perhaps it's an MOV file for a vast video, or maybe it's a JPEG file with a product shot and then a little blinking CTA as type of animation. We did an analysis of over 500 individual Celtra creatives, and these were the 4 categories we landed on for those mechanisms. The second part of an ad product is the content. Content is the advertiser assets that appear within the ad product format. And right, this might be the same asset as what loaded as the mechanism, Or it might not be. If the experience is built with a deeper, more engaging, user experience, there might be more than one piece. So the content is not necessarily a secondary state of being, like an expansion, but it could be. And these are the 5 different types of content that we have nailed down. Finally, once we've visually classified the mechanism and the content, we can group those combinations together into different ad product families. So ad product families are classified by their visual experience and goal. And after analyzing all those creatives, we landed on 6 different ad product families: impact, shoppable, gamified, video circulation, social display, and location. Each of these ad product families has a subcategory, including mobile first and dynamic or real time. And I'm sure you recognize some of these names from the RFPs you receive. So again, I love to stress, if you have other ways of talking about these ad product families, you call them something different, you see demand or hear demand for something else, we'd love to hear it. Feel free to drop it in the chat right now. But these are the sort of the basic ad product families that we've landed on. All right, now that we've gone through sort of the main things to understand about how we collected this data, let's discuss some of the top trends that are affecting the industry as a whole, and then we can dive into the analysis of the report itself. So I wanted to bring up a recent interesting report that I recently became aware of from eMarketer and Insider Intelligence. Maybe you saw this one too. But we're seeing, experts are saying that advertisers have been spending less on the open exchange over time and gradually shifting dollars into direct deals and PMPs. And in fact, experts are predicting that programmatic digital display will make up for 72.5% of what advertisers' total spend is by 2024. So something important just to note here about this eMarketer and Insider Intelligence data is that this includes both open web and walled garden inventory. And when we're talking about the Celtra Creative Insights report, we're not examining performance of ads in walled gardens. But the takeaway for us in reading this report and just kind of thinking about the industry as a whole, the takeaway is kind of the same, right? Advertisers are favoring closed and private ecosystems for access to valuable data and premium inventory. And this is something publishers can benefit from, right? With this uptick of direct sales, publishers having control over that closed ecosystem that they operate and premium data that comes from their media. So just an interesting trend to keep in mind. In thinking about the Celtra Creative Insights report and thinking about the positioning of the success of your media, this might be, a good argument to keep in mind when talking about the success of the ad products that you're running, in defending the premium nature of the media that you have access to. And in positioning the success of that media, you're going to need some performance metrics to compare it to. So top down, these are the benchmark numbers that we're looking at in terms of performance from our latest insights report. We look at 4 different Celtra metrics to tell the success story of each ad product: engagement rate, CTR, VCR, and exposure time. And if you're unfamiliar with what these metrics calculate, please take a look at our support documentation, celtra.com/support, that goes into detail as to how we calculate these metrics in our reporting system. So for comparison, we also break down the overall performance of each ad product family. And let's start with the engagement rate here first. Overall, what we've seen this year is that we're still able to tell a nice engagement rate narrative with gamification and social display really coming in there and top. In fact, if you download and read the whole report, you'll see that gamified ad products for the food and beverage and edible CPG industry actually surpassed the benchmark we calculated on that last slide with an average engagement rate of 2.47%. So still able to tell that really strong engagement story with gamification, with interactive components within that ad product, especially for CPG. A trend we have been seeing quarter over quarter is that video creative performed best in terms of clicks. So when we're looking at click-through rates and click-through rate benchmarks, This I think is an interesting thing to keep in mind compared to the performance of what we see from the impact family, right? So the impact ad product family, this is just your classic text and image as a message. Maybe it's animated, maybe it's static, maybe it's super large, maybe it's super small. Either way, that family isn't driving clicks like the ads with some sort of video asset are. So keeping that in mind, video circulation, video ads themselves driving the highest click-through rates as we're seeing. Next, we look at the overall performance of each ad product family in terms of VCR or video completion rate. And it's interesting to see that ad products classified as gamified were also driving the highest video completion rates. This is likely because of that playable aspect, right? If you have any sort of interactivity or gamification inside of that ad, which is keeping the user in the experience, they're going to stay there. So if there's a video playing at the same time, viewers are likely to stay longer on that video as they complete the experience of the game. But keep in mind, this might be really overwhelming for someone. Having too much motion, too much sound at the same time as trying to play a game might kind of cause a really abrasive experience. So it's best to keep in mind that those videos should be short, hopefully under 30 seconds. If we can get it, we'll take it. And then finally, we look at the exposure time by ad product family. Shoppable ad products had the longest exposure time. It might be explained by the time frame from which this data came from. When, again, this report, the data is looking at Q3 and Q4 of 2022, which was the holiday season of 2022. So viewers had that excuse to really be browsing through every single product within those shoppable experiences as they're building their holiday lists. So that might explain why shoppable ad products had the highest exposure time. Here we see a breakdown of the ad product family frequency by impression volume, just to give you an idea of what the market share looked like for each ad product family. And so we can see that video circulation really made up the bulk of what was running in Q3, Q4 of 22. And this makes sense given the shift into video, the concentration of video assets being created for CTV environments, things like that. There's just more video assets on the market. So we're going to see more of that running in Celtra. And then here we see a breakdown of the ad product family frequency by impression volume. Interesting, again, we see that shoppable ad products dominated the technology vertical, which makes sense. Again, given it was the holiday season, everyone's shopping for the latest tech. But what's something to keep in mind, something interesting to keep in mind is that shoppable is also taking the largest share for non-edible CPG. So I think what we see here is that this is reflecting that shift to e-com and online shopping. We're going to see more of those shoppable ad products taking the share for those non-edible CPG verticals. And then this, if anything, I think is the sort of the key takeaways from the report for best performing ads. Some interesting things to keep in mind. Large formats are still driving the best results. And you might be saying to yourself, of course, Nikki, yes, large formats, they take up more space, they're going to get more clicks. But sometimes, the art and the science are not that complicated. Interstitials and interscrollers, these are bigger canvases compared to your standard banner ad sizes. So if you have the ability to run them in your inventory, this is something you might want to take advantage of. We're seeing that actually interscroller engagement rates were 4 times higher than our standard universal banners. So again, taking up all that space, creating that introduction of the content through user scroll, these are all really great ways to drive performance. All right, so now I can stop talking about some numbers. You can get to the good stuff. I'm going to ask Vincent to join us here. Hi, Vincent. How's it going? I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice presentation. It aligns with what we do.
Yeah, I hope that it's relevant to someone. But no, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. It's always great having, some experts from the industry, just someone who's actually out there talking to advertisers and kind of sees what's going on, on the market, just kind of hear what you're hearing on the ground. So do you want to just like introduce yourself really quick?
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I met a few times before, and obviously we share the same passion. We believe in creative, right? We believe in advertising, and we'll celebrate that after this, and we'll go grab a martini. But I'm Vince Krsulich. I'm the president of Martini Media. We've been around for about 15 years. Started, interestingly enough, in San Francisco, more on the data side of how do you get to luxury consumers from a digital perspective. Back 15 years ago, magazines were still thriving or possibly thriving, and a group of wealthy men and women, but mostly men, unfortunately, started the company, and then realized early on that it's not just about the data, it's about the creative. Like, if you're in the premium business, you want to create an ad that is compelling, and many of these advertisers spend a lot of money with great photographers, great models, and how do you combine those? And that's why we have Celtra.
Yeah,
that's why we got you, Nikki.
It's not all me, I promise. But I think you bring up a great point, right? Like, sometimes there are these assets that are getting made, and they're wonderful, and they're really, really high quality video, really great product shots. But I think, as Celtra users and as ad builders, we can all relate, right? Like, we're sort of at the end of the line. Like, we can't really dictate, how great that quality asset is going to be. And if we're going to be able to continue to retain that premium nature as that asset continues to run across the media you have access to. So I think it's really interesting to kind of be looking, especially at your company's strategy here, with your focus on luxury, right? Because like you said, those assets are always going to be premium. But I think maybe some of the people on our call can relate. They might not have as premium assets all the time. So taking advantage of some of the things in Celtra that can really help make those assets shine is really what I'm hoping everyone on this call gets to take away. And as we look at some of the Martini Media ads, maybe this will hopefully inspire some ways to either treat those really high quality assets that you have, or maybe do something interesting with something that is maybe not as high quality.
Yeah, and look, and I would go one step further, and I'll shout out to Angela, our creative director. But those on the call, I don't know who's on, I didn't look. But I hope, or maybe you'll leave this by celebrating advertising. It's not just like, how about, hey, a good looking ad's a good looking ad, or creating a good looking ad, or understanding or appreciating the value in advertising. And advertising in this context is creative. So whether you have an amazing photographer shooting your creative, or you're doing it yourself, or you're working with another agency to do it, the first part of Celtra and Martini and what we're doing is ringing the bell and celebrating advertising, compared with the noise on data and privacy and all the other elements are going on into advertising that have been, dare I say, hijacked by Google years and years ago. Let's celebrate the creative.
Love it. Love it. I absolutely agree. It's so much harder to get creative, I think, as we see the proliferation of these walled gardens. And if I can go back to that data we saw from eMarketer, right? Like, the rise of the rebirth of the open web, I think, is really giving us a lot of great excuses to get creative. So let's jump into it. Let's take a look at some creative examples. So this first example, I'm going to butcher this name though. Hublot.
Yep, Hublot.
Oh yes, and I practiced that.
LVMH brand, a watch brand.
Yeah, obviously not the watches that I'm able to afford right now, but super interesting design choice. What we have here, this mobile first layout with a vertical video asset and an interactive overlay. So I wanted to see, Vincent, if you could talk a little bit about the assets you received for this. Did you get the video asset this way at this aspect ratio?
No, nothing. When we receive things, and again, shout out to Angela, our creative director, but also our marketing team is pretty involved in all of this stuff. So there's a bit of a collaboration. Sometimes we can receive hundreds of pieces of creative. And again, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your KPI? And so what we're doing is, clearly we're using the technology of Celtra, but we're also using our creative minds to see like, what assets do we have and how do we want to present it? Now with Hublot, they're a men's watch, but they had a female focus for holiday. They really wanted to show the video or show like some sex appeal, but also be able to click out. And if you were interested in the particular watch, could you see it and drive to site or even shop? The KPI wasn't selling watches, but driving to site and the ability to actually see what that watch would look like on site. And so we combined those. There was a mobile push. I think Hublot felt that people were on the go over holiday season, and so they wanted a bit of a mobile push. And so all of that together came up with this. And so no, we did not have the video that turned like that. We did it all, or Angela did it all. And where the logo goes and where to shop and what watches, all on our side. But, we're doing the creative work, but Celtra is our building block and able to help us make it work and then track it.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, I think it's really interesting the way that, if you don't have the perfect video asset, and like you were saying, like they had this focus, women's watches, you guys figured out how to make this work without, stretching the video or creating any unnecessary, bars or anything like that. And just creating this sort of like rule of thirds layout here, where that video is taking up just the right amount of space to grab that attention in a mobile first environment. I really like that one.
Back to your data points, like we are firm believers in sight, sound, and motion, right? Your data suggests it, and I even cringe at using the word data, but I know that that's part. Sometimes I like to be the salesperson and say insights instead of data, because I feel like it's a bit sexier, but we're firm believers in sight, sound, and motion.
Yeah. That is very obvious too by the rest of the ads we're going to look at here. Very much a running theme. Cool. All right. So let's move on to the next one. I'm going to pop into Volvo. I might have switched up the order based on what we last talked about, Vincent. Sorry, keeping you on your toes, but I wanted to bring this one up earlier just because it's so great. So again, that mobile first idea, we do see a lot of our inner scroller typically driving these higher engagement rates compared to standard banners. I'll also say here that the autoplay behavior of the gallery, really a big fan of that. That was a smart choice. So can you talk a little bit about, why the inner scroller format? Why did that work for Volvo? And why is this something that you're offering to your partners?
Well, I mean, just to be clear to the audience, we also, Volvo's a longstanding partner, and we do display on desktop with them. We like to call it cross-platform. This happens to be an example of mobile. I think for this particular initiative with 60/40, don't quote me, but this is, if anyone reading the trades and anyone understanding what's going on in the auto business, e-vehicles are the thing. We haven't reached a tipping point, but I believe by 2035, Volvo wants to have every single vehicle within their company electric, and so they wanted to sort of have the XC40, I believe, the XC40 shine. And so we needed to see the vehicle, right? Mm-hmm. We needed to see what it looks like and the sex appeal of the vehicle, but we also wanted to allow consumers or potential consumers to scroll and kind of go a little bit deeper and understand. And that's where you're seeing the scroller, like the scroller within the interscroller, so to speak. And that was really important to Volvo. And then in this particular instance, it was also where we ran this was really vital to them. And so the combination of all of that. Now, I think Angela received some video. We had to choose where we wanted to go. We did do some A/B testing. So you're seeing an example of a female within the video. We also had a male in the video. And so there's a lot of elements to this that went behind the scenes that, I'm sharing with you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before the webinar too, but I think you bring up a good point, like trying to find a combination of format and feature that's going to make the point that Volvo is like a luxury premium. I grew up, Volvo was a safe car.
Yep,
right,
safety.
Exactly. Yeah, like my friends were, they weren't allowed to drive their parents' cars, like they could drive the Volvo or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, like to find combinations of ways to really like bring forth that premium nature with a format like this, I think really does a lot. Because again, like you don't associate Volvo as sort of like a luxury car.
They've worked very, very hard. I'd probably say over the past 5 years. And I think most folks today who are in the auto market and shopping, certainly with the prices, but with the design, Volvo is luxury. There's no doubt about it. And their imagery, right, is projecting that. I don't think when you go on site that they've lost safety. It's sort of table stakes for them, but there's very much from an advertising perspective and also a design perspective. Mm-hmm. When you enter and go test drive, I mean, I get paid nothing for selling a car here, but they've really honed in on design elements that are a bit more luxurious. And you're seeing that in their e-vehicles. They're really, really sharp. And again, how do you bring that to life? Because no one yet is buying an automobile in a mobile ad unit.
Right.
They're moving to potentially buy a vehicle online, but that is such a small fraction. Most consumers really want to actually get inside the car and test drive first. And we have to compete with that, fact, right? Get inspired, feel sexy, have interest.
Yeah.
Drive to site, learn more, drive to site, drive to dealer. And so there is a bit of a process in the auto market. And it is, I mean, for those of you, again, I see no one but you, Nikki, which is always a pleasure. But, there's no metric for that journey, right? And certainly for many, owning an auto is their largest purchase. Perhaps, second only to a home. So It's a big deal, and it's not going to be done with one ad or one journey point.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Again, really, really big fan of just that the way that content's coming in and the way it's sort of like introducing this sort of luxury idea behind a brand that, maybe people didn't think was so luxurious before.
Yeah. And there was debate on where the video should land, up at the top or the bottom. And again, this is all part of the design element. This is all part of what we use Celtra to help track down the road, and then A/B testing. So it's a celebration of creative with some insights behind it.
Nice. All right. Got a couple more to look at. Let's jump into McAllen. I think this is my favorite one that we look at, just because it's so interesting. Like the content of this ad just like seems like something that I would want to consume outside of it being an ad. So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about what the assets were that you received for this, and the high quality nature of video assets, right? And some of the data we're seeing from our report, there's more video assets than ever. And as advertisers are diversifying their spends across, TikTok, Facebook, and more video assets are going to be created. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, how you guys decided to treat this video asset.
Well, if some of you noticed, both of the actors in this particular small clip are actually famous. They're British actors. This clip is from a 25-minute short film that they did about celebrating the original she wasn't the original owner. She was the daughter of the original owner of the Macallan, and how her father passed away and how she took it on. And so the video is, is a lengthy, interesting story, something that you clearly, would want to watch or could watch, but there's just no way you can deliver a 25-minute.
Yeah.
But not just mobile, desktop, even if you're doing something, CTV or OTT. So there was a lot of debate on which clip we would get or which clip we should use and how. I was not involved in any of that. That's the creative folks. And we took a small clip, part of the beginning and part of the middle. And you'll see there's a point here where she rips up the check that was given to her to sort of move on, and you don't need to be a part of this distillery any longer. So we put that together, but it is mobile advertising. So we had to have an element of interaction, and you'll see toward the end where there's a learn more and there's some kind of element, and then we let it run. And so there was some debate. Again, I didn't get involved in it, but we wanted to make sure we could show, for those of you who are liquor advertisers, the bottle shot is key. So we had to get that in. You'll see the 1826 bottle, which was a relaunch, which was one of the products that this is celebrating. And so we got that in the end. And you'll see we end with those two product shots. Again, click through. You can watch the full film, but more importantly, perhaps you can learn more about Macallan. And Macallan's a liquor that is very. It doesn't have a. It has a rabid following. It's oddly enough, it's a small batch, but well known. But their marketing initiatives are always shining the Macallan. They want to continue to make Macallan be that luxury top the top when it comes to Scotch. And in order to do that, you have to do things like this.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point too. It's really interesting. Like, you don't see the product itself, the bottle of alcohol, until really the very end.
That's right.
Which, almost, leaning into that narrative, there's a story here, there's text to be reading, there's, it's almost like the bottle itself comes second to the story behind it, behind that company and the narrative that this is trying to drive. So yeah, really great use of that video asset. And in terms of just kind of keeping it super high quality, keeping it super premium, even though, you can't stick the entire 25-minute video.
No, but that also lends itself to just our original discussion, celebrating creative, right? And clearly they went out and shot a small film and spent a lot of money on it. And it was actually, again, when was the last short film that you watched that was sponsored by or written by a story about an advertiser? Like, you'd be like, but yet it really is good. And I get no money. Like, yes, they're a partner, but don't watch it. I don't care, right? It's really good. And I think that it just reminds us that the creative, being part of a brand, you can be creative, being part of a community like you are, where you're a tech company that celebrates creative, and being part of a publishing / marketing firm that celebrates creative, like, celebrate creative, right? And again, if anyone, for those of you who I cannot see, just like, what are you doing from a creative standpoint? Like, how's your brand cutting through the clutter from a creative standpoint? And, you've given people the layout, like, here's some things, here's some benchmarks, here's some insights. Hey, read them or don't, throw them out and do it your way, but like, find your own way. But creative matters, just matters.
Love it. Love to see it. Absolutely.
That's why we're together, Nikki.
That's why I'm going to have you on all my webinars. No, I'm kidding. But maybe.
Happy to be here.
So happy to have you. So we'll take a look at one more creative example.
That's a good one.
Yeah, Per Soul. This is interesting. And just in terms of a lot of the ads we were looking at for this latest Creative Insights report. And again, it was the holiday season. It was Q4. So this idea of shoppable, this idea of, and you mentioned this too, like no one's really buying a car through an ad on the internet, right? No one's really buying very expensive sunglasses, luxury items through an ad, that they see. So to have something that's shoppable, super clean, super high impact, but not necessarily driving clicks, right? We've got a video asset in here. I'm curious, like, what was the goal of this type of unit? Was it to drive video views? Was it to drive clicks to that website? And how important is viewability these days to the advertisers that you work with? Is this still something that's top of mind?
So I'll answer the second part first. Viewability, and I forgot in our pregame that was a big important. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah,
it's table stakes, right? So, and viewability can mean a lot of different things, and I don't want to go into it. You've got lots of different vendors actually competing to see whose numbers are this or that. But let's just say being in a premium environment is a first start. And 99% of the premium environment, they wake up every day making sure that their content is awesome and that their ads are delivered in a viewable way. Period. End of story. And they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. Can it be hard? Load times affect it, and we can have a separate seminar for that.
Oh yeah.
Right? So without going down the rabbit hole, it's an interesting question because this particular ad has a lot of different features in it, and it's almost like the KPIs are competing because you want to deliver the video, but right. So you want to stay on ad unit, so there's interactivity, yet I want to get high click-through to get out and shop. And so you would think, hey, what are you measuring? Well, we're measuring all of it because first and foremost, it is holiday season. So we do want to know that you're watching the video and getting inspired, or remembering like holiday season, I need some new shades for summer, or I'm going away, or I'm getting shades for my spring break, et cetera, et cetera. But, it's per sol. There's an image to uphold. And we spent a lot of money, and we will continue to spend a lot of money in video, in creative. And so you're seeing a gentleman on a motorcycle, but we also had another video that was a female. It's not featured here, but again, we're doing A/B testing. And then we are bringing to life the actual sunglass that you look at and say, maybe I would want that drive. Now, what's also interesting, and I suppose I could give a small shout out to our former head of sales who was obsessed with our ad units. She was here for 10 years. She just left. I don't know what she's going to do with her new job because I don't think they celebrate ad units the way, but I know she's going to kill it. But she always would talk about the interaction of an ad. Like this ad actually flutters first. So it's auto-engaged. And she would argue that's one of the most important features. And perhaps Angela, our creative director, would argue that first. It starts by opening up, and it's about to do that now, where there's something that starts, right? You had an image, and then we went to the gallery. And that's a really unique element. I think it's something very unique to Martini. We celebrate this. And so that element alone starts the engagement or starts the interaction. Then we go to video, right? Along with clicking out. And this is a great example of a high impact display ad that has multiple features in it. And it was fairly successful.
Yeah. And I mean, I think just to kind of echo that idea of high impact, right? Like that word has been thrown around. I talk about that on a lot of different webinars. It could mean something different to everyone. For some people, it's the placement on the page. For some people, it's the effect of the animation. So for you guys, like would you say this is like a really great example of high impact? Is there anything else that like people should keep in mind when trying to achieve high impact?
I think that interaction, that very first flutter or something that moves and grabs your attention. Right now, keep in mind, there's also a media element to this. We're not celebrating, but they go hand in hand. So I'm putting a per sol ad, sunglass ad, style ad that flutters, that has video, that has shoppable on a premium site that is, let's call it Valet Mag, that celebrates fashion and design. And so you're putting a good looking ad on a good looking premium site. That combination works, but just sticking it up there without any interactivity, we would argue you have less opportunity to celebrate your ad. Creating an ad that has some interactivity to start along with where it's placed, I won't say that's the holy grail because there is no, Yahweh here, but that is the closest thing you get. And when we say high impact, I mean, look, perhaps, you and I should develop a new term and not say high impact. Just
I love it.
Creative, right? Like, what is high impact anyway?
That's a great question.
Creative, right? Like, and again, we can have another webinar about that, but
yeah,
developing ads that have sex appeal is really important. And that's the takeaway, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about advertising, yes, you're going to think about your audience. Yes, you're going to think about your demo and your targeting. But I would argue, please first think about your brand and then your creative. Once you got that down, call Celtra. If it's a luxury brand, call Martini, and then we can help you. Or don't. I don't care. We're happy. We're happy here at Martini. We love these guys. But
painting that full picture here. Yeah. Love it. Love to see it. But yeah, no, I think you bring up a really good point. It goes beyond, to think about creative holistically, you really do have to be thinking about the placement on the page and, how that placement comes into view and contextually what that placement means, within that article, if it's fashion, if it's celebrity gossip, whatever this is going to be, there's going to be a specific moment where that ad is going to be the most relevant. So really leaning into that, I think is great advice.
And sorry to interrupt, Nikki, this doesn't always have to be premium or luxury. Like, I remember we did work years ago, and I'm so bummed we don't do work with them. We sort of stopped during COVID, or maybe a year or two before COVID, but Nestle Waters did some work with us for Perrier. And they created the greatest ads. And, if you don't want to work with us, great, but I don't see any Perrier ads anymore at all. And they created these great, amazing ads. And not from a digital perspective, mobile perspective. And then when I went on TV, there was a similar 30-second spot that kind of had a piece of that creative. I mean, it was brilliant stuff. And it made me think like, hey, I'm going to be cool and drink Perrier. I actually enjoyed it. But like, they really celebrated that. And, you'll see a lot of the fashion folks do that. But, this can be done, this can be done with a water company. Like, this doesn't, CPG, doesn't always have to be just my target.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. That's, even leaning into the idea of how we've seen a proliferation of shoppable ads for CPG, right? Like, you can create these experiences. It doesn't have to just be sort of this low quality image. I will say, though, maybe the reason why we don't hear from Perrier so much anymore is the rise of spindrift, because I feel like that's like the really popular one these days. But I don't know. I don't drink seltzer. It's angry water, in my opinion. Just give me regular water. It's fine.
That's fine.
Anyway, well, thank you, Vincent. I really appreciate you taking us through those ad examples and giving us these tips and tricks. I'm going to start the QA panel, but is there anything you want to drop, your socials, your website, anything like that?
You can visit us. Actually, you know what I'm going to drop? Because I'm being asked.
Now's the time.
Go find us on Instagram. Since we're a marketing firm, we deal with luxury brands, luxury agencies, holding companies. And we recently relaunched our Instagram because I'm a bit passionate about it, because I think it's an image, right? I like the creative nature of it, non-political, whole vibe. And we don't have a lot to offer consumer to consumer, right? We're a marketing firm, but find us on Instagram because I think we've got a great eye. And And we want to celebrate. If you have a great eye or interested in great eye, we celebrate that. So find us on Instagram. And certainly you guys, anyone in the audience can find me on LinkedIn if they've got questions or interested in how we approach the business.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vincent. I love the Instagram plug because this actually ties into really well the Q&A question that we received. And the question was, noticing the use of vertical video in the McAllen example, this is very similar to ads seen on IG, Instagram. How have social ads impacted the look and function of display ads, both desktop and mobile? That was our anonymous attendee.
That's a great
Yeah,
question.
right? I don't think we could have, did we pay you? Like, I don't know
So
who
who is
are,
that?
but...
And he can come work with us anytime. We're not seeing it as much in display. You're seeing a little bit more, which we've worked with. A great example, Veuve Clicquot, right before pandemic, did this huge social campaign. And we actually took the social assets and built high impact display and used multiple features from multiple social products. And you put it actually into display, which was really, and didn't even do it mobile, which was interesting. I do think that, and Angela probably could address as my creative director, but I do think the verticalization is just part of how we roll. The scroll is just how our whole being looks at our phone. And we're definitely seeing more of that. From a Martini perspective, the interscroller really is physically how you look through Instagram, right? It's exactly the same. And so most of what we're doing is through the interscroller. So, that has definitely been affected 100%.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add to that is the furniture of social ads, like, right, the navigation elements, the way that different video stories are displayed with that loading bar at the top of each unit. Mm-hmm. I've seen that take off in desktop and mobile. I've seen that furniture get included in both display and video ads. I think we saw a sort of a rise of the family, what we call social display. And if you take a look at our report, you'll see that we do have a significant amount of ads being built in Celtra that are social display, really reusing those social assets in the display environment. But the way that you as a creative define social display could be different because, right, not every publisher is going to love the idea of just mimicking a Facebook post within their inventory. Maybe that's, not really going to sound so premium to them. But maybe there's just certain elements of that, again, like those stories, loading bars, or, maybe it's, the McAllen example, I think was also very interesting because it had closed captioning embedded into the footage of that video. So doing stuff like that, which is, more popular in these social channels, really, I think is a good way to lift and take advice from these social channels to affect the function and display, but without really just sort of like transposing an entire post into a display ad.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing that. I think the question is interesting because we're so, think about it. You asked me what I wanted to plug. I plugged not my open web, but I plugged social, right? Instagram specifically, because I think it's a good clip. But by the same token, when I'm talking to advertisers, it's interesting because you're taking potentially the creative and your ability to connect socially, but you're taking that creative and whether you're using mobile or desktop, but remember where you're placing it. You're placing it in a very safe, defined environment. So while you look at my Instagram to learn more about me, you're scrolling and seeing me, you're seeing Nikki, you're seeing something that's going on with some kids' lacrosse game. That environment is open. when you take that creative and build it into mobile or high impact display, and then you're placing it in premium. So you're talking about premium in your ad, and you're placing in premium in the environment. And I hate to be wonky, but that is a better way to get people together, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Again, just really leaning into that idea of that's what matters to advertisers now, right? Like that safe environment, that really curated place. So being able to deliver that and kind of keep that consistent with the design of your ads, I think is definitely a trend we're seeing on the rise. All right. Well, we are pretty much out of time. This kind of took us to the top of the hour, which is great. So if you're interested in seeing more creative insights, learning more, definitely reach out. Celtra, we're just Celtra.com, or you can email us at info@Celtra.com. I'm Nikki at Celtra.com. That's 2 Ks, Nikki at Celtra.com. And again, if you have any follow-up questions, want to take a look at the report, or maybe you would like to see something that the report isn't telling you, please reach out, let us know. We'd be happy to go deeper into our dashboard and see if we can get that information for you. I want to thank Vincent once again for joining us, our special guest. We hope to have you again soon. And thank you for everyone for joining us on this webinar.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Bye.